Yo, welcome in everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. Welcome to stream. We are starting things off today with an interview with the one and only Gregan. A big shout out to him. Thank you so much for coming and doing this. Before we get started though, I just want to let you guys know, as always, I won't be interacting with chat during the interview, but at the end, I will be opening it up for community questions. So if you do have a question for him, hold on to it till the end and we'll be sure to get to that. Otherwise, yeah, let's jump right into it. Hey, there you are. Perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being here again. These interviews have been a lot of fun, kind of talking to people, getting to know people a little bit more in the community. So yeah, let's jump in.
I like what you're doing. It's a good idea to do these kind of more in-depth interviews. I think there's a lot of like quick stuff and article-based stuff, but it's always good to get to know people.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times it's like an interview based on like a specific instance that happened or something, and I'm kind of trying to do more of just like in general, like where you came from and like how you got to where you are. So yeah. Yeah, going back to speaking of where you came from, growing up, was this ever a dream of yours to be where you are at today and doing what you're doing?
It's a good question, and I don't think I dreamed of doing what I do now. There's one thing I always talk about whenever I talk about where I came from. When I was at school in sixth form, I was told when you leave university, you'll be searching for jobs which don't exist right now. And like, I think they gave some stat like 50% of the jobs that will be out there will be jobs that don't even exist right now.
Yeah.
And when I got told that, Rocket League wasn't out at the time. It might have been in like alpha or whatever.
Yeah.
Vitality wasn't a team yet in esports, and the esports scene was barely professional. And then 5 years later, I'm there managing one of the best Rocket League teams in the world for an organization that's massively invested in and growing. It was a crazy kind of ironic statement that I'll always remember. And at the time, it didn't seem like it was possible, and then now it is. So yeah, I guess I never thought this would be the case.
That's awesome. Do you have any siblings that ventured into gaming, or are you an only child? Or
I've got a brother. My brother is a PE teacher. He's very good at his job, I think, from what I can see. Cool. He seems to be doing a great job, and we always used to game together. I think it's part of the reason why I'm so competitive. I think anyone who's sporty growing up and has a brother who's also sporty, and both of you are into gaming, everything turns into a competition.
It's true.
So yeah.
No, I totally get it. We had to stop playing board games as a family because people would get yelled at.
Yeah, Monopoly in the UK is a big one. I don't know if it's big in other countries, but in the UK it's known for destroying families.
I don't know about destroying families, but when you first started playing Rocket League, did you have a specific player or content creator that you really looked up to that inspired you?
Oh, so this is an interesting story. So when I started out, I was part of a Minecraft community called the Nox Crew, and we played Rocket League regularly, and I was like the Rocket League guru because everyone was always asking me questions, and basically I've been coaching Rocket League since I started. But yeah, when I first picked it up, that was where I started, and I didn't really see anything outside of that. And I do remember the classic finding Cronovi, and then watching his stream, and then he had that thing which came up, which was like, check out my friends, and I checked out Gibbs and checked out Subpar.
That's
and
awesome.
I remember asking Cole, because at the time I was starting out streaming, I remember asking Cole when he was live, do you find you play worse when you're on stream? Because I've been streaming recently, and I've been feeling like as soon as I go live, I feel like I'm playing worse, whether it's lag, whether it's wherever it is. And he was like, oh yeah, it's really hard to play live and all this kind of stuff. That was my first interaction with Cole. But then another really cool story. So I obviously said Cronovi was one of the first people I found.
Yeah.
After I commentated my first event, I sent an email to James Bot, because I was like, I really want to get into this commentary, and I saw he was a commentator. He seemed really cool, professional and everything. Sent him the email. He responded and said, yeah, come join our TeamSpeak. We'll have a little chat. Cloudfuel was there. Me, Cloudfuel, James Bot had a little chat. And then at the time, it was school time or work time in America. So every other pro was out doing their thing, because at the time no one was professional except for one person, which was Kronovi, because he'd just taken a bit of time out of university. And so then they're like, oh, let's just go hang out in the lobby. And I look up and the lobby is literally just one person, which was Kronovi. And so the first pro I ever spoke to was Kronovi, which at the time was
amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, that was my introduction to the pro scene in Rocket League, was through the North American top pros and commentators like James Bott, etc. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I had the opportunity. Kronovi's so chill. I had the opportunity to meet him at TwitchCon this past year, and we chatted for like 15 minutes and stuff. And it was just, he's a really cool guy.
He's a legend.
Yeah. Are there a lot of detail? So did you play competitively for a brief period of time at all?
Kinda, yeah. I did the whole ESL weeklies and stuff like that with friends.
Gotcha.
But as soon as I started getting good at the game was when I was commentating as many events as possible. So there was this period where I'd look at a Gfinity or I don't know, like an ESL or whatever it was, and I wouldn't have teammates to play it with because I was always commentating everything, so no one wanted to team up with me.
Right.
And I also wasn't really looking for it. And like the Rocket Royales and all those kind of things, that was when I started like pushing into top ranks and everything. That was when I was commentating, so I never really got a chance to compete properly, but I definitely went through a period where I stopped commentating the weekly stuff, because once you start doing studio stuff, it kind of becomes awkward doing the online things.
Yeah.
So I stopped doing those, and so I did a few Gfinities here and there. So I think on my Liquipedia it says that I won a few Gfinity weeklies or got to the final of Gfinity weeklies. So I used to play with like Speed, Flame, just a few of the little like Gfinity Elite Series pros and everything like that, and do all right. But yeah, I've never really competed hugely. Always looking for chances because it's always good fun.
Yeah, I just brought that. I mean, obviously I looked on Wikipedia, so they had like those little games in there.
There was one tournament I remember that was really fun, which I got to the final with Speed and Flame, and we were against Fairy Peak, who obviously at the time was my player that I was managing.
Yeah. And
he was playing with two upcoming French players, which were Cassio and Alpha.
Oh wow!
And I just remember being like, "This is so cool that he's found these two guys who are really good." And then like next season, Cassio joins an RLCS team, I think, and then Alpha joined Bluey and Devo in Barcelona. So it was like Fairy Peak teamed up with them for weeklies, which was really cool.
Yeah. How crazy has it been to see the game evolve so much over the past couple of years as far as mechanics and game speed?
It's weird because when you're living through it, it doesn't feel like it's changing. But then when you look back and compare it, it's obviously a massive jump.
Yeah.
I think right now, the biggest thing that I can appreciate is how good how many players are. Because there was a period where obviously your top players really stood out and they were incredible. But then there was a massive gap between them and the next rank. Whereas the fact that there's just hundreds of players who are capable of what the top players are, but they're just not consistent enough, or they don't have the experience to do it under pressure, whatever it is, they are capable of it. They just need to perform it. I think that's an exciting time because we are starting to see those stories come through of the Pittsburgh Knights and the Uniteds of this world who've been there for the last like 6 months before they made it, but they just not had the chance to break through.
Right.
Maybe even longer for some of them. It's obviously we don't see that. So yeah, I think that's the most exciting thing with Rocket League now is just how many people have access to that level of Rocket League.
Yeah. I think I could be mistaken, but it seemed, at least for me, that like the Pittsburgh Knights was like the first like breakthrough where at least I started realizing like, oh snap, like there's all these other teams that are just like right there, like they're right on the edge, like, and at any moment like any team could take like any tournament. Like you can't just look at the top teams anymore, you gotta look at all these RS players and like teams coming up, like any of them could break through and perform really well, it seems.
Yeah, and it seemed like for a while that you couldn't break through as one of those up-and-coming players without joining a player or two who were experienced. Yeah. Like an Astral or whatever, where he comes in and he's got that experience to kind of nurture him in, whatever. But now we're starting to see that there are teams of completely fresh players. And actually, if you look at a lot of those fresh players as individuals, you can see that they have grinded out competing at the top level. Yeah. They have got top 16s in DreamHack qualifiers, top 8s in DreamHack qualifiers. I think even like, for example, AXB made it to Leipzig in 2018 2017, I think it was,
Yeah.
as like a out of the blue qualifier maker. So all these players have been grinding and working their way up. It's just that they found the right group who've all got that right mindset and enough experience that they could break through it. And they're only going to get better with that experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. What got you into, you kind of answered this a little earlier, but what got you into commentating and wanting to pursue that instead of competitively?
Yeah, so the James Bot email was preceding a few events that happened. So I used to go to Insomnia Gaming Festival with my Minecraft community I mentioned before, the Nox crew.
Yeah.
And I was quite into public speaking. I did it at school. I used to do science talks and stuff like that at school. And then I did an event where two of my friends were commentating the Rocket League, but they weren't that good at Rocket League. They had like 20 hours each. I think at the time I had like 500 hours.
Wow.
And to be honest, I was probably, to not sound too arrogant, I was probably the best player in the venue, but I wasn't competing in the event that was going on at the time. Because there was this guy, I remember, Jay Winks, who was this like god in the tournament. Everyone was like, oh, he's unbelievable. And I played ranked with him the next day, and it was kind of like when you're carrying your mate who's a little bit weaker than you. So it was one of those where it was only the fact I didn't have a team that I competed in it with.
Right.
So then my two friends were like, hey, can you be a guest commentator in the final? You know, you know this game better than any of us. Come and help us explain it. And so I guest commentated in the final, just completely for free, out of fun. And all of my friends who are watching were like, you can do this. You've done public speaking. You know the game. Yep. Why don't you try and do this? And that's when I emailed James Bot. So I think it was that moment there where I was like, oh, this is a thing. I could be a commentator. And then I think it was my internet. So that was just before Christmas. My internet got upgraded just before Christmas so that I could start streaming. I think I started streaming January 3rd, 2016, or 2016. And so then I started streaming, commentating, doing all that kind of production-y stuff. Had a nice PC, webcam, Blue Yeti, you know, the classic startup. So yeah, that's what got me in, really.
Perfect. When did the conversation with Vitality begin about coaching their team? I think I read about this before, but I'll let you.
So I've always sort of looked at my journey to getting to where I am, and there's a lot of really specific moments that are very fortunate, but then I also have to appreciate the fact that those fortunate moments happen due to the fact I network and do all that kind of thing. But there was this moment. So I got to do Clash Royale, the first season of Clash Royale, through a freak event whereby Shogun was finishing up the RLCS season, and it was in the same studio that RLCS were broadcasting, that Clash Royale were going to be doing it, and the scouting guy was really struggling to find EU-based talent. So he kind of just went to Shogun on a whim. He was like, do you know this game, Clash Royale? Have you ever played it before? And he was like, well, one, I've never played it before, and two, I want to go home. I'm sick of LA. And so he said, ask Gregan, he might have played it. And actually at the time it was Low5 was the guy who was scouting people. Very small world esports. So then I get this message from Low5 being like, hey, you interested in interviewing for a Clash Royale gig? And I was like, I'm sorry, I've never played this game, but sure, let's see what this is about.
Yeah. So
I did a little bedroom interview, and I think it was like 2 weeks before my exams, for second year of medicine. It was like, right, this is not the right time to be doing this, but I was just like, screw it, let's see what happens. So I did this little interview, and they went, okay, we want to fly you out this weekend to LA to do an interview. And I'm like, what's going on? This is mad. So then I fly out to LA, do the interview in person, still having never played the game. I sit in front of Supercell, commentating their game, not knowing the name of any of the troops. I called a mega minion a flying teapot. I didn't have a clue what it was called. I did this whole interview, and God knows why they chose me, but they chose me to host a show because they wanted someone who was like a straight out of college British kid.
Yeah.
And apparently I fit the bill there, so that got me that gig. And while I was out there, Vitality had a player in the tournament, Nem Sensei, and one of the staff of Vitality, who's still there, White Penguin, he's an absolute hero. He was just waiting in the lobby for his player, and I was waiting in the lobby for some people. And I started chatting to him, and I was like, oh, Vitality, they're interested in getting in Rocket League. And at the time, they'd had a chat with a few teams, and they almost got Frontline on board, PSG, before they became PSG.
Yeah.
but that didn't quite work out. Oh no, it was Chazette, Violent Panda, and Pashi, I think. So a little while ago.
Yep.
And then Chazette was kind of with the connection. It didn't quite work out. So they asked me a few months after, when they said, "Oh, we're interested in Rocket League again. Hey, can you scout us a top 4 team?" So I did the whole scouting process, got them connected with Gfinity Elite Series, got them in contact with all the players in the top 4 teams. It was like, Complexity before they came to Complexity, Gale Force before they became Dignitas, Mocket, obviously, who then we picked up. And then the other top 4 team was Frontline, who'd just been picked up by PSG. So it was like I helped them with that whole process. Gave them some other options, maybe developing a lower level team into an RLCS team, all sorts of stuff like that. And then at the end of that, they're like, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I think it was at the right time.
I would assume they would have done that. Like, you did all this work for us.
you just never know what situation's going to arise, because Absolutely. I think a month before that, I'd been offered a management job at a team, and I just went, "No, I think I want to be a commentator." And it was at this time where I think the talent was announced for RLCS Worlds, and it was just a bunch of new people who'd never done a big event before. And I just went, look, they don't want to get people who've got experience in Rocket League commentary on board. They're clearly looking from the North American pool, and obviously that still stayed apparent.
Yeah.
And I thought, do you know what? European talent isn't a full-time job. You have to do what Johnny Boy does, where he's got a stream himself, or what Shogun does, where he was the one guy. He was the guy who they always wanted. So I just went, right, I'm going to commit to this management thing. So Vitality, right time, right place.
Yeah.
They offered a great price, and I went, this is how I'm going to make my mark in the Rocket League scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that'll ever change for
story.
like on the EU scene?
I think if Epic have a European office that suits Psyonix, bringing in a Psyonix branch in Europe, then it is potential, and then we can start seeing a separation between the European North American region in the same way it's done with League of Legends, where you kind of have like a European league that's operated by Europeans in a European studio and everything like that. I think that's the point where European talent gets their break, but until then, visas are too complicated. And I think the added cost of having a European flyover, have to accommodate them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just not worth it for them. And I understand that is a European who's double the cost really worth it? And I think Shogun was. I think people like Johnny Boy could be, but he obviously he's gonna have to be treated correctly, otherwise he's not gonna be able to do his streaming and everything, and he probably doesn't need it.
Right.
And then you'll start going, well, who do you need who's better than what they've got in North America? And that's the whole reason why visas exist, right? Isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Prove that this person couldn't be found in North America,
Right. Yeah. So I just want us to skip ahead real quick and just ask you, how does it feel looking back on what you did with the Team Vitality to bring them where they are now, without going into too much detail on the journey, because we'll get to that after this. But looking back at like where you started, the day that you really started coaching them and stuff, to where they are now.
I think two things really stand out. Is one, seeing the development of everyone there has been amazing. Like Fairy Peak, from the beginning to now, he's blossomed as an individual. Like the fact that he's streaming now and he looks so much more professional with his haircut, and the fact that his interviews are amazing. His English gets better and better. He's just so much more comfortable in public and everything like that. That kind of development, that's what I'm incredibly proud of, seeing the progress there. Same with Scrub, like from having him on board. And then just Vitality as a whole, like the organization when I first joined was incredibly small and underdeveloped as an esports org, and now it's one of the most heavily invested in esports orgs in the world. And I think seeing that development and being such a big contributor to their profile was an amazing journey.
That's fantastic.
And the fact that VHive now exists, the fact that their shop exists, the money that they got invested in, the brand they've built up, the players they're getting, all that stuff. I'll always be a Vitality fan, no matter what in the future. And so I'm very proud to see that happen to Vitality. So that's probably the biggest takeaway. And then obviously that development has happened to myself. Like I got thrown in at the deep end, having to manage the most players I have had to manage in my time at Vitality from the start with the Gfinity Elite Series.
Yeah.
With little time to prepare for it. I was working like 14-hour days at the start just because we had so much work to be doing. I was waking up, working it, not having lunch breaks, working through lunch, falling asleep, waking up, doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And that was like thrown in at the deep end. So yeah, I think personally I've developed so much just from that.
That's awesome. Okay, so now let's look at the journey. So you started with Pashy, Fairy Peak, and Freaky. Mm-hmm. What was your game plan starting out with the team to kind of just, make them, one of the top teams?
Yeah, like I said, the original plan Vitality put out was a top 4 team in Europe that we can win a world championship within the next 2 years. That was the goal. That was what Renault Sport wanted. That's what they invested in, and that's obviously what Vitality wanted. They wanted to win.
Yeah.
And starting out, I don't think I had full confidence in that starting team to be able to do it. I think there had to be a lot of hard work and development, and I don't think it was the fault of Freaky per se. I think Pashy maybe was struggling a bit to keep up with the game and was losing motivation for the game a little bit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think Freaky was lacking the ability. I think he just had a difference with the way Fairy Peak saw the game, and that was why that didn't work at first.
Yep.
But to be honest, from the start, I wasn't really coaching the team, and that was one of the big difficulties for me. Was I was a manager who wanted to coach.
Yeah.
And while we were at Gfinity, I obviously had the chance to coach a little bit, which on stage and give advice and everything like that. And that was good and that was useful. But it was only once we had the struggle in season 6, we didn't quite make it. I was in a stream with Subpar, watching the gameplay, getting frustrated, seeing all these things that I couldn't give them advice on. And that was a point where we agreed, and Scrub in particular was pushing it, of being like, right, we need a fourth view, we need a discussion starter, we need someone to kind of bring the team together a bit, whether it was my knowledge or whether it was just my initiation of conversation kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I came on board as coach. So I'd say first year was a learning year and very much like a development year, and I think switching in Scrub was amazing. He also needed development time during that first season. And then really blossomed in season 7, and then the dream come true when you hear that K-Dot wants to join you. That was I was like, this is real now. This world championship is within our range. And so that was definitely the point where it all changed. And so obviously 2019 was a fantastic year. It could have gone better, but Rocket League's very difficult to be consistent at the top with.
Absolutely.
So that was definitely the journey was kind of like, we're getting closer, and then K-Dot was there, and it was click, right, this is the point where we go. Me coming in coaching, K-Dot joining, Scrub having that experience, Fairy Peak now feeling confident because he's got K-Dot on board again. It's like everything clicked into place.
Yeah. You covered a lot of stuff there. Bringing Scrub Killa on. So when you brought Scrub Killa on, knowing he was so young, was this did you have any worries about that, or was it just was it planning ahead?
I think I knew Scrub fairly well at the time. I'd played in a few tournaments with him and I knew what his mindset was like. I'd met him in person through Insomnia. I actually sat next to him on day 3 at season 5 quite a lot and chatted to him there. So I was like, I don't want to say I was scouting him, I wasn't consciously doing it, but I was getting to know him because I had a lot of respect for him and wanted to learn him. I even met his dad before he came on board, see what his dad was like. And all that kind of stuff contributes to it. But I was a very big advocate for bringing on Scrub because I think at the time I saw that bringing in experienced old players who were losing motivation was kind of going out of date. I think every team that had brought on experience wasn't seeing the results they were necessarily hoping for. And the teams who were booming were the ones who were bringing on fresh new players who'd never experienced RLCS, who really had that drive, and I saw that drive in Scrub. And I think I messaged Pashy being like, you've got to try Scrub, and Pashy was like, played with him at DreamHack Summer, he was a bit off at times, he's young and there's things he needs to work on, and it was like, I'll try other people first. And I was like, right, just make sure you try him. And then I get a message 2-3 days later from Pashy being like, we're sick with scrub. And I was like, yes, right, let's do this. And then obviously that's the point where you start forming a profile for Vitality and start sort of working out prices and all that kind of thing. And yeah, that was a really cool process, because that was the first time I really felt like the team had brought me into the conversation properly, where before I was kind of like the organizer. At that point I felt a part of the team a bit more. And yeah, I think that journey, I mean, the end of 2018 was tough, because from the point where we dropped Freaky, we didn't have any contact time in person really. I think we went to Silverstone, which wasn't great for the team wise. It was a great experience, but it wasn't like time to chat and work out the future. And then, you know, like until we met up for Leipzig in 2019, we hadn't had in-person time. And when you've got that decentralized approach, it's really difficult to work well as a team, because you're working online. And I can see why so many teams that are on that like 5 through 12 in a region level, it's so difficult when you don't have events like DreamHack coming up to really get that team motivation going.
That's crazy. Okay, let's talk about going into RLCS Season 7 Worlds. What was the strategy? Did you have like a clear strategy for that RLCS, like for world domination?
I'll be honest, it was the biggest worry I had was us. We didn't look at opposition as our biggest threat. The way I saw it was we were able to beat anyone if we played our best. And it was trying to get that best out of everyone. And we had Dallas just before, which didn't go very well, but we learned a lot of that event. I created a huge document to send to Vitality on what we need to do to feel confident at Worlds. And then one of them was merch. So Vitality weren't intending to send out all the merch at that point, because they were kind of trying to send it out to all players at once across Vitality, and so there was a bit of delays there. I was like, you need to send this to us before our biggest event of the year. Not only is it getting filmed by so many different people, but this could be huge for the players' morale. And obviously once they start receiving all these little gifts, it's like Christmas, so they're like, oh, this is amazing, I love Vitality, I want to win for Vitality, you know. So we go in looking incredible with all of our stuff. We do the boot camp, which went really well. We were boot camping same place as G2 and Oceanian team. I forgot the ones who were in our groups. It was our group. We're all in the boot camp together. Their names slipped my mind. Anyway, so that we were all in the boot camp together, and we had 240 hertz monitors. Food was easily accessible. Everyone was happy. We went to New York the first day I arrived, so it was just about having the good vibes, having a good environment, eating well, drinking well. When we got to the event, it was just about like doing what we do when we prepare for the event. So for example, we were one of the only teams that did 2v2s as warm-ups, because that's how our players warm up when they're at home. They do ranked 2v2s, but when you're on LAN, you don't have access to online play. So we used to get like Shazette or Farah or Alpha would come and join my 3 players and do 2s together, and it was just their way of like warming up. And
did you not have a sub at that point to be the 4th player?
We did. It was Nexo, but he didn't have a PC, so it wasn't really possible. There's only enough PCs for every player.
That makes sense.
Good idea, though. Maybe that's something Silence can do, have an extra PC.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Be like, just for Vitality's 2v2 warm-ups.
And it's interesting, because at Season 8, a lot more teams were doing private 2s just to warm up, because it's just a really good way to get your mechanics, and not just necessarily your mechanics, because free play is great for that, but interacting with another human in isolation over and over again, where 3s is a little bit too cluttered to be able to do that. That was part of it. You know, we made sure we got good sleep on board and everything like that. And then day 2 was so I'm incredibly prudent, and day 2 was one of the weirdest days ever, because I went away from that day after we lost to G2 and sulked in my hotel room for about 5 hours, because all the players were frustrated. You know, it didn't go to plan. We had to do so much content there, so we lose our game and you've got people going, how does it feel to have lost? And it's just frustrating.
Oh man.
And I took one for the team and got the Renault Sport documentary. They were like, we need to do a load of just chatting about the story and everything. We need to chat through every scenario. Now, if we win, you're going to tell us like, oh, it was amazing, we won. If you lose, you need to kind of do an example of that and be like, oh, it's a shame. We'll go for learn from here. So I had to do this all in my hotel room. It took like 2 hours. They left. I'm just sat there like, we didn't do enough. We didn't work hard enough. We didn't do all this. We didn't do that. I thought we did all the right things. And then just day 3, it clicked. Like we got up an hour later than anyone else because sleep was so important. We went over on our own an hour later than any other players. You hear the story of K-Dop airboxing to get Fairy Peak going. So we got K-Dop. K-Dop's got all the energy for Fairy Peak. Scrub and I, like we're getting juiced up, and we're just having fun. And we've got no anticipation to do anything special. We're just going in, having fun, taking each game as it comes. And then I think it was like game 2 or 3 of NRG. It was like, we're winning this because they were just playing incredible. And so that was kind of the journey. Was like preparation was great. Day 1 was like getting used to the environment. Day 2 was like, what have we done? We've done nothing. We're awful. And then day 3 was just like, let's just have fun and do the best we can. And it just went super well.
Cool. Going into the series against G2, did you have a specific strategy for that team going against them? Like something specific that you wanted to focus on that you knew was like their weakness?
We knew what their strengths were and we were looking out for them. They do the drop down pass. I mean, at the time in particular, they did the drop down pass that was, they just knew quicker than anyone else on the pitch they were doing it. So obviously they communicated it really well. And so I think Fairy Peak in particular was just blitzing towards the middle to cut that kind of stuff off. And I think that was part of the reason why G2 looked a bit shook after early games. Obviously you had the game 1 win, which was going to shake any team up, but I think we started capitalizing on that, and I think it's very easy for any team who's lost previously to go into a rematch with a better mindset, because you've got stuff to learn and gain from, whereas the opposition, it's very hard to learn from a big win, especially when a team plays as badly as we did compared to what we can do, because you don't go like, we've got to capitalize on these mistakes because we might not make those. So we kind of just came in, loads of comms, have fun, and just really work together, the more we work as a team, the better we do. And I think there was just like this natural step up mindset that the team had, especially Scrub. He's instinctively a step up player. Like that's how he works. He always wants to step up on the stage, so he did that. Fairy Peak took the energy from K-Dop and Scrub and did that himself, and K-Dop obviously day 3, K-Dop always steps up, so I think that was a big part of it, is they all just like brought out communication they've never done before. They brought out this performance they've never done before, and I think that was it was just something like, I don't want to say magical because that sounds like it was something like they just found out of nowhere. And it was just the moment, having fun, no pressure, just do your best, and it came out.
Was there any worry when G2 won game 4, or were you guys pretty much just like, nah, we got this?
I think you're always going, oh, that's one of our lives. But to be honest, we all had this kind of weird feeling during the Cloud9 and then after the Cloud9 series that today was our day. Because the way we were playing, if we just carried on playing that way, I don't think there was any team that could win a best of 7 against us at that time in Rocket League. And so I think that was the mindset in the team. We just got to keep replicating that performance. Because ultimately in Rocket League, and this is something we kind of drilled in beforehand, the only thing you can control is your own performance. And obviously you can do things to improve your chances against certain opponents, understanding how they play. But ultimately, if you play your best and they beat you, that's because they're better. You got to go away and do the preparation and do it better. We went into that going, we've got the most hours of any team here. We've done the hard work. We've done all the preparation to be able to perform better than anyone else. We've now just got to execute it. And so when we did that, that was that just symbolized how hard work does go into. I think it was at Leipzig just beforehand in the boot camp, we had the team ethos of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yep.
And that was like what we rode through our LCS. You know, yes, we scrim less than other teams, but we focus in our scrims and we learn in our scrims and we try and bring the best performance in our scrims. And that was something that potentially after season 7 dropped a bit in terms of the focus, but in that lead up to that first Worlds win, that was, I think, the reason that we got there, is that willingness to work a bit harder.
Yeah. Also, big congrats on that. I know that was like forever ago, but like it wasn't that long ago. Crazy. Like no. I feel like RLCS seasons just like fly by.
I always feel like kind of weird accepting congratulations on people who I organized performance and obviously coached a bit.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're the ones who did it. They're the ones who deserve credit. And I feel humbled when people think that I had a big influence on it.
Yeah.
Obviously I did have a small influence, and perhaps that was what was the difference. But yeah, I still have that weird like imposter syndrome of, wait, do I deserve this? Do I deserve being given the praise for other people's success?
Yeah.
So yeah, it does always feel weird when people say stuff like that.
Well, I think, you know, kind of what we've talked over this whole time, you know, the journey of, you know, Vitality as an organization and your part in their Rocket League side of things. I mean, that definitely points to you as a manager and coach. So I definitely think some of the praise should go to you for, you know, a win at Worlds. So
thank you.
I don't want to talk too much detail about season 8 for time's sake. But can you touch briefly on how much of an impact you felt being on stage with the players during the games had for that event, and then, you know, moving forward, obviously?
Unreal, I think, it's just such a big difference being on stage. And I think to compare directly, we look at DreamHack Valencia and then we look at DreamHack Montreal. DreamHack Valencia, there was a lot of sweeps. In particular, we got swept by NRG 3-0 when there was really simple things we could fix, and it just needed someone to sort of say, this is what we need to do. The mood was a bit down, you know, that all of that stuff was stuff that I was always trying to do, was create the right environment, give little bits of advice between games, that kind of stuff. And then at Montreal, not only did my team come back from really awkward situations, I remember particularly Reciprocity, we lost with a goal at 1 second, 2 games in a row, and then K-Dub scored the own goal to put us down in the series. And it was like, if it wasn't for the fact I was on stage, I don't know how well that team would have been able to bounce back. But the fact I could be there, put my hand on K-Dub's shoulder and be like, you had to go for that. Don't worry. Look, we reset now. And obviously K-Dub is incredibly mentally strong.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he would have been able to bounce back in some way. But then you've got Scrub and Fairy Peak at the side of him. He's just gone, my teammate scored no goal. He's going to be tilted in this game. You know, all that kind of stuff. Having someone there and just to reset the team makes a difference. And we saw the same thing with teams like G2. They got a reset in the middle of the series. There was, I think it was Mouse. They had a nice little reset. And I think the amount of bounce back we saw at Montreal and at Worlds to an extent was thanks to that coaching influence. So I think it's huge for the future of Rocket League to make it closer, more competitive, see more consistency within teams.
Absolutely.
And not see sweeps as often, which I think is not good for the sport, esport, when you've got so much at stake.
Right. Especially in such a competitive game, because, you know, when you have sweeps, it just becomes sort of boring to watch, you know, because it's like, oh, well, you know, they're getting run over again.
And one of the big problems we had as well is every other environment, the coach was there. When they were backstage at DreamHack in the player area, the coach was behind them. When they were playing online, the coach was in the call with them. The only time where the coach wasn't there in their communication was when they're on the most important matches on stage in front of people. So these players are getting used to having a coach in their ear to kind of help them settle.
And all of a sudden they're gone.
And suddenly you're gone. And obviously you can prepare for that like we did at Worlds to an extent, but you can't replicate it.
Right.
That puts too much pressure on an individual or each of the players to be able to bring out that side of their character in the game and be able to ease the tension or ease tilt or say people, you're doing great, keep it up. You know, they want to have a mental break in that minute as well as their teammates. So
All right, and then just quickly, was there a specific reason you decided to move on from coaching, or at least coaching Vitality? Was it just you felt like your time had come, or
there's a few reasons.
you're like, we got second and I'm out?
Yeah. I think the one which everyone's going to go is language barrier, and I think there isn't a language barrier in the sense that Alpha, Fairy Peak, and KDOP can all speak good enough English that we can communicate in that way.
Right.
But I think for their sake and for the sake of the future of that team, I think having a French coach will be good for them, because that will allow them to have that ease of tension in a full French communicating world. You know,
Yeah.
if between games I go, bien joué, I need to speak English now because I can't speak any other French. Well done, you did great. And they're there going, oh, we've got to think in English again now. You know? Like, having it all in French will help that. And I think in particular for KDOP and Fairy Peak, who are an incredible duo and a great two players, I think for them, having Alpha won't necessarily be, let's bring Alpha on board to be the star. I think it's now KDOP and Fairy Peak can feel unlocked and be able to play as a top team and be the difference makers. So I think that's something we saw week one in particular. KDOP and Fairy Peak really shone. So for their sake, I think it's good that they've gone full French, and I'm sad to leave Vitality, and they did try and work out, I say we did try work out a position that could mean I could stay in Vitality. I was willing to move to Paris. I was willing to go to great lengths to be a part of that project, but I just didn't quite fit into any roles that they were looking to create at the time. Maybe I'll be back in the future, but ultimately I want to develop my career in esports, and I don't think taking a step towards management when I want to go down the coaching player influence route at the time didn't make sense, because I think they were willing to keep me on board as manager with Mout as their coach, you know. But it just I didn't feel like that was the right direction for me. That was like going backwards. So two things: one, like I said, we tried finding a position, and two, there's so much out there, you know. I'm now in a position where I'm 2 years further into my career of esports. Esports is 2 years further into its development as a business and industry. And what I want to do in esports right now is starting to really come into so many organizations. And so I've had chats with various organizations, and it's really looking exciting for the prospect of doing what I really want to do in esports, which is a more holistic approach towards players. The whole meme of water and everything like that, that is obviously a meme, but it's a big part of what I want to do for players, is provide correct nutrition, personalized performance focus, and stuff like health and fitness. If they want to get fit, doing stuff for them that will benefit them aesthetically, physically, mentally. Obviously fitness is a huge part of that. Sports psychology, all that stuff. There is a massive envelope of ways to improve an esports player, and that's where I want to go. And so that's why leaving Vitality right now I think is the right time. As I'm going to have a bit of a chance to go freelance, develop my knowledge and understanding, and coach more people. Sorry to keep whittling on here, but the way I described it is, I've played poker with 3 hands for the last 2 years, where I want to play poker with every hand. So I want to learn every individual, how they all work, and understand them completely. Now, if you played poker with the same 3 hands over and over again, you'd understand the game of poker incredibly well, but from the point of view of just those 3 hands. Whereas if you get the experience or the other ones, you see things that you never saw before. And that's soon I'll be coaching more broadly in the high level grand champ and pro scene on an individual basis, just because I want to develop my skills as a coach, which I don't think I can do under a specific team again, where I would be limited to another 3 people. And then I'm finishing my personal trainer course and all that kind of stuff. So it all just kind of lined up perfectly, going freelance for a bit. Ready for kind of second half of 2020, where I can really develop that holistic approach.
Awesome. And then lastly, chat, we're coming into our last question. So if anybody who's here, if you do have any questions, get them ready. But what is the next event that you are planning to be at?
Good question. I think I'm going to be going to Worlds. I've not planned it yet, but I do want to go. It'll be nice to go as a spectator and with no pressure. And see everyone again. But I'm just open to seeing everything right now. I just want to learn as much as possible about esports in general. As much as it would sadden me to have to leave Rocket League, I think for my personal future, I'm respecting that Rocket League isn't the end,
Right.
and looking to develop an understanding of esports as a whole.
Yep.
And so if I were to limit myself to just coaching Rocket League, just going to Rocket League events, just talking with Rocket League people, I think I would be pigeonholing. So at the moment, I'm willing to go to any UK-based events, learn as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I was meant to be going to the COD League at Copperbox, but that unfortunately fell through. So who knows what will be around the corner for next event.
Yeah.
So
I feel like, kind of like you were mentioning, when you're with your first casting position, you just kind of ran in blind and just kind of, succeeded at that. So I feel like, your opportunities are kind of endless if you, wanted to do casting or anything. So
I just say yes to everything, and it has let me down in the past by doing too much, but yeah, it seems to work out if you can find the time for it all.
Yeah. Awesome. Johnny, will you be at RLCS? Yeah, he said he was going to try to. Chad, I have no idea if this is asked because I came in late, but how did you get into the esports scene? Chad, I would just suggest go watch the video or VOD. It will be up on YouTube. We covered that kind of at the beginning, so we won't take the time to go over that again.
I will add to that about esports in general. So before Rocket League, I didn't really have an interest in esports, and like I mentioned, I went to Insomnia Gaming Festival with my Minecraft community.
Yeah.
And there was one night where we used to hang out together and really focus on going together to everything. And I remember one night I begrudgingly went, okay, I'll go with you. Where they were going to watch the Halo esports at this event. And I went and sat in this auditorium watching Halo esports and just thought, this is so stupid. Why would anyone watch this? It doesn't make sense. The commentaries, I don't get it.
How old are you?
The camera's not showing the right things. 18.
Okay.
I should have been able to understand that this is a good thing, but it just didn't fit for me.
Right.
But then as soon as Rocket League came out, I was like, I get this. I enjoy this. Because I love sport, but I don't really watch sport. I just find it boring to watch other people compete in things unless it's something big like a World Cup final or a big event like a Ryder Cup or a Ashes cricket thing. You know, watching league matches just doesn't make sense to me, but that's because I've never found something that I love like I do with Rocket League. And even then, I can't watch RLCS every single week because I don't have that passion to watch Rocket League over and over again, but I keep up with it now. So
I was at TwitchCon and I missed the Fortnite Rivals series, and so I went to the League Rivals series, and I know absolutely nothing about League. And I was just sitting in there what is going on? But then by the end, it was a really close game. So I was super hyped for no reason. And I was even though I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, League of Legends is probably the hardest esport to watch if you don't know the game.
Yeah.
Which is weird considering it's so popular. It's just so many people know the game, which is why it does so well. I call it the cricket of esports. In the UK, cricket is known as this very complicated game unless you play it, in which case people love it.
Yeah.
And so
I have
if you've
no
never
idea.
you just kind of go, why is it taking so long? Why is this thing happening? It doesn't make sense. Why is that interacting with that? Why is this important? Why is he going for that?
Johnny G, great question. Who is the most skilled player in your mind at the moment? That's
so difficult.
Oof.
There's so many factors that make up an individual to make them good at what they do. For example, Turbo Pulsar mechanically is well out the top of the RLCS and everything, but smarts wise, he's one of the smartest players in Rocket League. The same goes for your Ferras and your K-Dops of this world. The stuff they do, people don't appreciate, but I wouldn't ever consider them the most skilled players. It would have to be a Justin or I'm a big fan of Garrett G. I always have been. I think he's a very well-rounded player. He has, in my opinion, I think he's got the perfect balance of mechanics, brains, and competitive mindset, all that kind of stuff. Someone like JNaps is very good. It's interesting because 2 years ago I'd have only gone with European, but I genuinely think North America is better than Europe now.
Yeah, it's like the top people you just named off is like the whole NRG team.
Yeah, NRG, and then JNAPS is incredible.
Yeah.
I think in Europe, obviously mechanically, Astral's amazing.
Yep.
I think Chazette always been incredible. I think his call to fame goes through waves. Like DreamHack 2017, me and Shogun were massive fans of his, and then JNAP stole the show because all the social media and North American talent and everything are all like, oh, JNAPS is incredible, but meanwhile me and Shogun are like, Chazette's incredible. So yeah, I've always been a big fan of Chazette as a player. I think Fairy Peak, his brain is just massive. He sees the game in a way that's so there's so many players, and I think it's very hard to just specifically say one. But I think in terms of the most well-rounded, all-encompassing, got good enough mechanics to be in any amazing team, you could build any team around him. I'd say Garrett G.
Awesome. Chad, if you could shortly answer, if you wanted to get into esports scene like casting, how would you go about that? That's tough.
That is tough, and I think just practice.
LaiFX kind of covered that a little bit in his interview, but
yeah, you just got to practice it. But I think most people who are good at casting, the ones who really make it to the top, have some kind of history which gives them a head start. So like I mentioned earlier on, I did a lot of public speaking. I made YouTube videos. I really analyzed the way I present and communicate myself before I went into commentary. So as soon as I went onto that commentating stage, I already had a step up over other people, and then that's when you build on it. But ultimately I put hundreds of hours into voluntary commentary, and from there you build up. And I think there's a lot of commentators who I remember when they first started out, back when I was just moving on from commentary, I went, there's no chance I'll ever be doing big events. But then they put the hours in, they do the grind, and they're now more than capable of doing it. And I think that's the key to any success in anything you do. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. There you go.
That's a great motto to live by. And lastly, Max Carrot Gang says, hi, Gregan.
Hello.
All right. That kind of wraps things up. So, chat, say bye to Gregan. Bye, chat. Switch.